Yeah, it's so interesting. I was at a white paper launch in London recently at the House of Commons, where it was all about looking at the impact of AI on the
Hmm.
workforce. It was really, really interesting, and it was addressing AI as almost like this digital workforce, which is augmenting all the different other workforce channels that there are. But one of the things I found fascinating about it was that it was kind of raising questions about things like, okay, if you're just focused on paying people for their time, what difference does AI make to that? In the sense that if Johnny is doing a piece of work that takes him 5 days, but by
Hmm.
utilizing AI, it only takes him 3 days. What's the focus? What's the correct focus? Is it time or is it output? And actually, it was joining other factors that are definitely expanding the use of output based or outcome based contractual agreements to deliver the actual work that organization needs to do. And I'm sure that must be something that over the span of your career, how have you seen that kind of change, that approach to like outputs?
Yeah, so I love the question, and I wish I was part of that conversation because it sounds like just a really compelling topic, and I don't actually think it's that future focused. The idea, and shame on me for not saying this earlier, but as we talk about those project solutions and teams and how it can be executed between internal talent, independence, solution providers, staff augmentation, you have to add to the list AI agents. That is absolutely part of how work gets done already today, and even more so, it's going to change exponentially over the years ahead. So, going back to your question, to say, the evolution to output. The addition of AI agents, which allow for, at least today, transactional and administrative work to be done very effectively and efficiently, and in turn allowing your talent to focus on higher level and more complex challenges and solutions, is just the first iteration of well, I shouldn't say, let me rephrase that. It is it is the continuation of a long trend towards output. And it doesn't mean that we never manage effort. I've talked about this in other conferences that I've been at, but I really see the pandemic as the accelerator there. Because if we think about, and you'll forgive me for opining here, but if we think about the historic workforce where you had a manager, a direct line of sight, literal direct line of sight, managing an individual and their work output and the execution of whatever their task or assignment was. Now all of a sudden that person is not in office. They're in their home. They're 100 miles away. They're 2,000 miles away, etc. And that work relationship has changed. They're not in line of sight. We're not managing it that way. The most effective way is to look at the results, to look at the output, to look at the outcomes associated with that. And although the services procurement marketplace was always larger than the staff augmentation, it's growing at a pace that staff augmentation has stagnated for 3 years now, whereas services procurement has shown continuous growth, and it's not by happenstance. And now you take the addition of AI agents in here that allow for that output, right? So now this project is 5 days, it's now 3 days in your example, but the work's getting done, and that individual is focused on higher value outcomes, presumably better work product associated with that. That is game changing. So, to me, this is a long trend, but we just poured an accelerant onto the fire, and we're going to see it continue at a quicker pace.
Yeah, it's really interesting particularly when you talk about COVID being one of the catalysts for that.
Hmm.
I really agree with you on that, and I also think just the level of volatility and uncertainty and the speed of change that there is in the market. It just means that organisations need to be more flexible with their capacity and capability, and
Yes.
having the external opportunities to flex and be agile around that are just becoming more and more critical. And the ability to work to specific objectives can often be a real differentiator in how pragmatic and effective that organization is, rather than in maybe slightly, should we say, possibly easier times when just having a bunch of people working on stuff was more acceptable. That could be kind of like a slightly open ended. The
Yeah.
pressure on organizations to deliver and compete and to do it at a faster rate in a more uncertain environment has never been higher, I would argue, than it is now, and that has grown from that kind of pandemic
Yeah.
situation, together with that whole kind of change of work scenario that you so nicely described. I think a lot of these factors are combined just to make this much more of a topic of conversation rather than something that people kind of theorize about. There's stuff that they're either rapidly putting in place or they're scrambling to make sure they're on top of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so we're agreeing on a lot today, Johnny, which is which is fun. Um and as you described that old world scenario, it was very linear, right? One person, their work output, etc. That dynamic is changing, and that puts new requirements in terms of what the commercial model is and how we structure this work. I'll tell you what I think, though, hasn't changed, although it very much lends itself to this environment, is the need for a level of assurance. So if I'm if I am in charge of a large project, in that old scenario we talked about, that assurance was on me in that line of sight management, managing their effort and output. Now, as we're partnering here and you're introducing AI agents, that project owner, that partner, et cetera, you're relying on them for that level of assurance. And there's a great value in that, right? So major project, impactful to business, organization, reputation. Um, how do we structure this and manage all of these work channels to ensure not only is the output there, but there's a level of confidence associated with it and an accountability. And am I willing to pay for that? Of course I am. It's part of the reason I think we're seeing this trend accelerate is because there's greater partner assurance than in the old pure staff augmentation mindset.